Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Leupold's Hunt Talk Radio. This one we're doing a little differently. We're going to be filming this one for our YouTube channel in addition to recording it for obviously the podcast. And I apologize in advance. I'm home alone. By that I mean my wife is not here to take care of her 14-year-old little dog that is deaf as a post. So if you hear some dog yiping going on, we'll hit the pause button. But my wife has the misfortune of living with two deaf animals, her dog and me. Marcus Hockett is with me. You've heard Marcus on many podcasts. Marcus is the guy who also films this operation. And we get to spend a lot of time together, and we usually solve most of the world's problems in that period of time.
Long drives?
Yeah, long drives, sitting around campfires. I mean, if you want to solve all the world's problems, just spend that much time hanging out together. But today we're going to talk about hunting deadlines. We got tag deadlines coming up. We're going to talk about how we drew tags already this year, you and I, how we're doing e-scouting. We got to get into, unfortunately, a little bit of this craziness called politics. The last few episodes of the podcast, we've kind of let the politics drift aside. We had Fred Eichler and Kyle Lamb on, and then we had Terry and Joe and JR. So with Congress now back in session, with state legislatures in session, I guess we're just going to have to jump in on some of those topics. So anyhow, appreciate everybody being here and listening and watching. I've got my cheat sheet here and now this is the funny part. Now that we're filming this one, people are going to see how this happens behind the scene, and they're going to be like, Newberg keeps more notes. He's always writing something down. What would he do if he had to do it off the cuff here? Because you're looking at all this. I don't know how many pages I got here, but it's a lot. But before we get into it, this podcast is Leupold's Hunt Talk Radio. Leupold is our greatest partner, our longest term partner, just such a wonderful group of people. Great products, great everything. So thanks to them for making the podcast possible. And now our other three partners, we've got on the same page with every one of them. The promo code for all of them is the same. Randy.
Okay, that makes things easier.
for guys like me, all of a sudden it becomes easier. So we've always had the promo code Randy with Go Hunt. And if you go to gohunt.com and click on their insider, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit here when we get into the tag drawing stuff. Go to gohunt.com, click on the insider, and if you use the promo code Randy when you sign up, you're going to get a $50 Sportsman's Warehouse gift card. Right now, before we set up, I was over in my office there and had Go Hunt out. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do in Colorado when I have no points this year.
Yeah.
I'm in a bad way with points in Colorado, but I have one deer point, so there's still options for me. So promo code is RANDY. Onyx Maps, we're doing this e-scouting series that we're talking about. Yep. And Onyx is just so critical to that. And they've got the same promo code, Randy, RANDY. And here's the deal with them. Use our promo code Randy and you get 20% off every purchase you make with them. Yeah, that's a screaming deal for all you. So if you're like me and you can't live without maps and mapping systems, Onyx Maps is the thing. You have it on your phone, don't you, Marcus?
Yeah.
You have the full app.
Yeah.
I have it on mine, but you can see the age difference here. This is a technology guy. This is like an old Luddite right here. I can barely turn on a radio that's something other than And younger people probably don't remember this, but you used to have to roll your dial across the radio. So that's pushing my technology limits. But Onyx Maps makes it simple even for a guy like me. So use promo code Randy and get 20% off. Lastly, and certainly not last in anything, but just last in mention, is Orion coolers. Orion now is using promo code Randy, and if you use that promo code when you buy your Orion cooler, you're going to get this cool tumbler. They've made this stainless steel tumbler that has the Hunt Talk logo on it. You get that for free when you buy your Orion cooler. So use promo code Randy, and you won't even have to pay for the tumbler. And I don't know if people would use it to drink beer or coffee.
All of the above. It's got to rinse it out good. I remember to do that.
I don't drink beer, but does your tumbler get skanky like a coffee cup can?
Probably. Well, you gave me one of those stainless steel ones, the Sitka stainless steel one. I've been using that for beer when
Have you?
yeah, and as long as you clean it out, it's fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know if beer would ferment and get bad like
I
a
mean,
coffee
I'm
cup
sure
does.
if you left it in there, but
Yeah, leave like that little 1/4 inch in the bottom and let it grow down in there. That
Yeah.
would probably do it. But anyhow, those are the sponsors of this podcast. And Orion is, if you go out to our Facebook page, we give away an Orion cooler every month for some promotion. This month it was St. Patrick's Day. Last month it was Valentine's Day. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do. You know, March Madness is going on right now. Out on Hunt Talk, our Hunt Talk forum, we always have a March Madness thread. And so today is Monday. The tournament starts on Thursday. Sometimes I've given away a few $100 cash, and I don't know if that's legal. I'm probably going to jail. One time I gave away a Leupold scope. I'm not sure what the prize is going to be this year, but here's the rules. You have to go out to the Hunt Talk thread and click on it, and it'll take you to where our group is out on, I think it's on Yahoo, and you sign up, and whoever wins our bracket gets the prize. But you also have to be a member of Hunt Talk. So you can't just show up and decide, oh, I just want to sandbag these guys and steal their prize. So if you're not a member of Hunt Talk, you don't get the prize. So I'm not sure what we'll do for a giveaway. Leupold's sending me a bunch of new scopes this year. They just sent me an email the other day, so I got to replace all the scopes on my rifles. And the ones I have are very lightly used. I mean,
seems like a reasonable price.
Yeah, I mostly use my 3 Howa Alpine Mountain rifles,
Mm-hmm.
and Leupold sends me scopes for every rifle. So some of those scopes got put on rifles, got sighted in, got my 0 set, and that's it. So there's like maybe 20, 30 rounds through some of those. So maybe, I wonder if a slightly used Leupold VX6 scope would interest people.
I'm sure.
You think so?
Oh, yeah.
All right. And then, anyhow, we'll get to that later. But we got draw deadlines coming up, and already passed. The deadlines that have already passed are Wyoming and Arizona. And Marcus and I applied in Wyoming together for elk, and we drew.
Yeah.
And now we're like, holy crap! So much of that is wilderness area. What are we gonna do? So we're shooting this e-scouting series for YouTube, and I think that unit is turning out to be a pretty good exercise for what we have to do.
Yeah. I mean, I've been looking at it, and there's some intriguing spots. They're not very big,
Yeah,
but there's some intriguing spots for sure.
yeah. It's just how it works for us. We have to draw tags. So a lot of times we end up applying in places that are easy to draw, because Marcus had, what do you have, 1 point?
I had 2.
You had 2 and I had
Yeah.
1. So we averaged 1.5 points, which I saw the odds. We would have been guaranteed the tag with 0 points
No.
in the expensive draw. So
Oh.
we kind of burned some points we didn't need to, but
Oh,
well. Not much we can do about that. Maybe we should have tried it as a second choice, but
Oh.
we need to have tags. So in September and October, Marcus and I are going to be down there, either archery hunting or rifle hunting or something, and trying to figure out how to hunt that ground, because it looks like most of the early season elk habitat is in the wilderness area.
Yeah.
And those of you not familiar with Wyoming, you, as a non-resident, you can't hunt the wilderness area without a guide or a Wyoming resident. What do they call it when the Wyoming resident joins you?
I don't know, but don't they have to be like with you?
With
right?
you, right? Just the same as what a guide would be. It's not like they can walk you into the wilderness, say, "Oh yeah, set up your camp. I'll see you in a week."
Yeah.
They got to be right there with you. So that pretty much crosses off, I would say 80% of the prime elk habitat for us. But
Yeah, a lot of, or at least the early season stuff is all. I mean, all the high elevation
right, 10,
stuff is
11,000
in the
foot
wilderness.
stuff. But oh well, that's life. In Arizona, we're going to find out on the Arizona draw. Let's see. Usually you find out the end of March or early April, so we got a couple weeks here, and we'll know what Arizona holds. I only have 4 points, so I'm not thinking. I applied in units where I have a chance at 4 points. I didn't apply for anything that's like lottery style, home run stuff.
What did you do second and third? Because Arizona doesn't that.
They do the first two in Arizona. So they look at your first two choices before they go on to the next guy. And then you can put in a third, fourth, and fifth, but
it's like no point hard.
Yeah, as a non-resident, you're wasting your time doing that. And then we have Montana that's coming up on the 15th. So this podcast is going to release next week. The Montana deadline will already be passed.
It'll already be passed. So.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people are counting on Montana as kind of their fallback option, because we've had leftover elk tags every year for the last 5 years, I think it's been, since the price increase in 2011. So, but every year that number gets fewer and fewer, and someday they're all going to sell out, and the people wanting to use that as their fallback are going to say, "Uh-oh, well, why wasn't I on the ball there?" But do you have a lot of elk points in Montana?
Whatever the maximum amount is, I think. So
Really?
It's like 15 or
really
something.
I
might be one less than max.
Okay.
I can't remember. I kind of hit it perfect. I turned 12
The
right
year
when they started
the system.
points. So
Okay.
maybe by the time I'm 70, I'll draw something. Well, I could put in for units that I'd actually have a chance of drawing, but of course you have to,
You put in for a really hard year.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of don't even want to draw a tag this year. We got so much other stuff going on. It would just be another headache to hunt.
We'd figure it out.
I party apped with Kara, so if I just to lower my odds, because she only has like 2 elk points or something. So I cut them down pretty good.
Well, what if you guys might be the couple that ends up drawing?
Probably.
And then you'll have double that, as you called it, headache.
Yeah, that's what I would. Shoot raghorns or something.
Yeah, there you go, 15 points and go shoot raghorns. But Montana will be behind us. So in front of us, we got Colorado, which I think is, we got New Mexico, which is March 22nd. So this podcast will roll out just a day or two before that deadline.
So you can rush out and apply really quick if you haven't already.
all the applications that we've done in New Mexico this year for me and a couple guest hunters are like 1% odds. It's like, New Mexico is a great place if you got the strategy. And going back, we did that one podcast, episode 48, I think it was. It's called Hunt Elk Every Year.
Yep.
And my strategy in New Mexico is just swing for the fences. And people are like, how do you draw such good tags in New Mexico? Well, that's what I apply for, because I don't count on New Mexico as my gotta have a tag every year sort of place. So
when you got the same chance as everyone else, because there's no bonus points.
No point system. So, and then after that we got Colorado, and then after that we got Nevada, then we got Idaho, and then we got Montana, moose, goat, and sheep still.
Yeah, that's another thing. You got different. I mean, if we're just talking elk here, but then if you're going to be applying for all the other species, you got.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people listening are probably like, Newberg, I don't apply in all those places, and I get that. I fully get that. But for the TV show, we have to have 10 to 12 tags to hunt each year. So I don't know, between me and you and my son Matthew and all the guest hunters, we probably apply for 100 to 120 tags in a year.
That's pretty crazy.
So to get 10 or 12, that means we're hoping we get 10% of the tags we apply for. So we're going to be unsuccessful in 9 out of 10 of our applications.
Yeah.
And this time of year when all that money is out, my wife is like, really? Why? What's the deal? What, have you seen the credit card balance lately? Yeah, pay it off. Don't worry about it. And then she's like, pay it off out of what? Yeah, I'm. Oh, my wife's dog is trying to get up on the couch here, and I just clanked her in the head. So, if you hear some occasional interruptions, I apologize for that. I'm trying to keep this dog from yiping and barking, and I'm convinced that if she was a puppy, our YouTube channel would be way more popular if I had her on there than if we had me on there. But,
There you go.
so we have all of those ahead of us. And back to that episode number 48 where we said hunt elk every year. I just got back from elk camp down in Nashville. Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation had their elk camp last week in Nashville, Tennessee. And a lot of people had listened to that podcast, and I got a lot of feedback on it, but a lot of it was almost like skeptical. Like, are you sure? You sure that?
What parts were they skeptical about?
It was reasonable that you could go and hunt elk every year.
Okay.
There seems to be the impression still that any of the leftover states or over-the-counter states or general tag states, say like Idaho or Montana or Colorado, that it's just a waste of your time and money.
That you're just not going to find elk?
Right. That the places where your tag would be good for are such bad places that why would I even bother? And I told them, I'm like, if you guys knew how many big bulls are shot, and if we just looked out that window right there and looked up there, I bet you every year there's plenty of 300-inch and better bulls shot. Just scanning out that window right there.
Yeah.
And that is a general unit here in Montana. Now everyone's going to come to Bozeman and hunt. They're going to say, where does Newberg live? How would you look out his window to see elk country?
There's a lot of ground up there.
Yeah, there is.
There's a lot.
And some of it's not that accommodating to foot travel.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you might have to put in a little bit more effort, but if you're willing to. I mean, I've never had a special permit for an elk ever.
Really?
No.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I guess a couple cow tags, but
Yeah.
it's hunted the general season in Montana every year.
I've
killed a few. So.
Yeah, I would bet 9 out of 10 people in Montana every year, more than that probably, 9.5 out of every 10 people are hunting the general tag in Montana because we don't have that many limited entry units. And so it's just a matter of hunting hard, a little bit of luck helps, and getting away from people.
Yeah.
So, and the same applies in Idaho. I know some guys who shoot some really, really nice bulls in Idaho.
Yeah.
And when you ask them where, they just smile. They're not going to tell you, obviously, otherwise it wouldn't be a good spot going forward.
Well, and then even the years that I haven't killed an elk, it's not like I didn't have a good time. It's
Right.
still awesome being out there. Had close calls. You see elk all the time.
Right.
I mean,
Especially in archery season.
yeah, for sure.
If I was a non-resident and I didn't draw my quote-unquote glory tags in Arizona or Wyoming or Nevada, Utah, whatever, and I was an archery hunter, you couldn't keep me out of Montana because our public land is all the high ground, and the low ground, the valleys, is not always, but mostly private. Well, in archery season, where are the bulls? They're up where the cows are. And where are the cows in September? They're up high where the good food is.
Yep.
With occasion, you're going to find them down low in the alfalfa fields. But the accessibility of our elk in archery season is way better than it is in rifle season. And I don't know. I understand some people would say, well, I'm not an archery hunter.
That's true. Yeah.
And if that's the case, and you're a rifle hunter only, and you didn't draw your glory tag, I'd be looking at Colorado or Idaho probably. Montana's a pretty tough rifle hunt.
Yeah, it can be, I guess.
Just because, well, like I explained the dynamics, as hunting pressure and weather come, the elk go lower, which is more private.
Yeah,
Not all private.
and we do have a decent amount of private land in Montana.
Yeah, we're 2/3 private.
Yep.
But we also have a lot of serious elk hunters.
Yeah.
So I have yet to walk into any far reach of the backcountry where I haven't either seen another hunter or their footprints that, gosh, I don't have this place all to myself. I don't know what that is, but I guess just kind of the mindset, at least in this part of Montana. I don't know if it's like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely other parts, I think people are not as willing to walk far. I think that,
Really?
I don't know if it's, the Bozeman, Missoula culture, there's more active people.
Yeah, a lot of
versus
backpackers.
like the ATV crowd. They're like, why would I get off the road? I can drive around and find an elk right next to the road. Why would I walk away from
Didn't
that?
you say your one friend, he's filled his elk tag every year and he's always got him out whole?
Yeah, just about. Yeah, pretty much. Always gets them out whole. That's like the goal. It's not like I'm looking for a 6-point bull. No, I'm looking for an elk that I can get out whole. That's the goal.
And I've never got one out whole. That's going to be part of my strategy for this year. When we go to Wyoming, let's find an elk we can get out whole.
I'm not sure about that. We can try. Without snow, though, I don't know how that's going to work.
Okay, if not in Wyoming, maybe I'll draw a tag somewhere else. And my goal, somehow, some way, I want to get an elk out whole.
Probably help in one of those places that's very densely roaded.
Yeah.
And some places in Arizona have some
Yeah,
roads every half mile. Pretty much.
Arizona, New Mexico, you got a pretty good chance of getting one out whole.
And that's probably why the draw odds are so low. Well, and then they also have some quality animals.
Right. It's a combination of lots of public land, easy access, and quality animals. So to have any quality or have any population at all, you pretty much have to restrict tag numbers. So
yeah.
Whereas Idaho, if you hunted central Idaho, I don't think you could get a jackrabbit out whole. Those guys who hunt central Idaho, that is like serious, mean, nasty, ugly. That's got to be some of the worst country in the lower 48. I drive by that, I'm like, ooh, man, I'm getting too old to hunt elk country like that.
Yeah.
But I know guys who go in there and they go into those burn areas and they do very well. When they send me pictures, they're always in a burn.
Yep.
And I'm like, they hunt the same place as I do. Yeah. I've been getting tons and tons of emails since the one podcast we did where we talked about burns. And since so many ask for this website, it's called INCIWeb, INCIWEB. So go out there all summer long, be keeping track of where fires are in areas you might hunt. I do it all the time, and I know I used to be able to archive that stuff. Someone emailed me and said, oh, you can't get older information off there anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Do that. Contact biologists. Find out who the fire manager is for the BLM or the Forest Service in that area. They'll tell you where all the burns were. Oh, yeah, in 2012 we had one here, and da-da-da. And then get on OnX or whatever map system you use. Better be OnX. It's the only map system. But a lot of people use Google Earth. And I use Google Earth just to verify and see what the most recent image files are and stuff. So that you can see those burns in there. So easy with aerial imagery.
Yeah.
And if people, I'm surprised more haven't caught on to it from our footage and our photographs. Other than antelope, pretty much everything we shoot ends up being in a burn, on the edge of a burn, near a burn. This year in Montana, the whitetail I shot was in a burn. The mule deer we shot was in a burn.
Yeah, I don't know, because I feel like that is somewhat of a mindset of not wanting to hunt those areas. I don't know if it's maybe it's just doesn't look as good to like in their mind. It's not as visually pleasing to look at a burn versus like
I think that's
some
the
big
case.
open meadows or.
I think that's it. I think we have programmed ourselves to visually say what looks like pretty elk country.
Yeah.
To me, the prettiest elk country is black and gray with lots of new green regrowth underneath it. When we were in New Mexico, Tim shot his bull in a burn. The bull I shot in Colorado, that was just an ugly, nasty canyon there. There were some burns down lower, a few places that burned, but where Corey, when we hunted with Corey in New Mexico, we found a lot of elk in those burn areas, but he ended up shooting one in the grasslands rather than in the burn. But,
Yeah.
So, and the year before, you look at it, so many of our elk were shot in burns. It's just place after place, whether it's mule deer, elk especially, even whitetails. If you find low country burns in the West, you will find whitetails and that stuff. I think didn't we talk about a whitetail trifecta one day? Like Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, and also a black bear trifecta.
Yeah. You could do it, especially located where we're at in southwest Montana. It's perfect for it.
We're trying to figure out how we do that. Unfortunately, we got an Alaska trip this year, and I got a graduation I got to go to in May. So our black bear trifecta might get put off until next year.
Yeah.
But I think we need to do it.
That'd be cool.
Because black bear season in Wyoming opens May 15th. So we could be there. Well, heck, we could hunt them here before then. And I think it opens in April in Idaho also.
Okay.
So what are we? We could be in Idaho in 100 miles.
Yeah.
We could be in Wyoming. Well, we can't hunt in the park, so we'd
have to
go east
a little ways.
Or go further south. So we might have a little over 200 miles to get to Wyoming. And then we'd have about 10 miles to go here in Montana. So
yeah, if you're successful though, you'd have a whole lot of bear meat all at one time.
Oh gosh, and just the cost of getting them all checked for trichinosis, it'd be more than one tag. I think it's like $70 now to get the test done for trichinosis. Some guys don't get the test done.
I just cook it to 160 and
is that what you do?
I've never had it, so
I get it tested. I don't want to be like the meat eater crew and end up with trichinosis and all the other foodborne illnesses and diseases they end up with. But the whitetail trifecta would really be easy also. If you just went to northern Idaho, came here to Montana, and pretty much anywhere in Montana we got whitetails, and then went to eastern Wyoming. I mean, we did that hunt with Matt this year.
Yeah.
And Matt wants to do it again.
Same spot?
Different spot.
Different spot?
Yeah, we want to move around.
Yeah.
Go see where other places are.
Cool.
So we might be doing that again in November because we're going to have John hunting with us in southeast Montana.
Oh, right.
Cushman. Yeah. So we could just, after that hunt, we could just hop over the border somewhere in eastern Wyoming and go do it. And we get those Wyoming tags as leftover tags. Don't burn our points.
It's nice.
End up with a leftover tag where you get to hunt whitetails in the rut with a rifle in November. Why all you Midwestern guys aren't out here doing that is beyond me. But maybe you guys just like hanging out in tree stands or something. Have you ever hunted out of a tree stand?
I have, kinda. I mean, it's not in the traditional sense. It's a big old tree that we hunted out of a little piece of public land.
Yeah, I used to have all these lone wolf tree stands.
Oh, yeah.
And I gave them all away last spring when I had the Come and Get It event. People are looking, they point to all these tree stands laying on the floor. And I said, yeah, those are free. Take them. I had climbing ladders, everything, because every time I've been up in one of those tree stands, the wind blows 70 miles an hour. And I get to thinking, how does anyone sit in one of these all day long?
Yeah.
I admire people who can do it, but I can't.
Yeah. It's different for sure. I don't enjoy it nearly as much as spot and stock anything.
But if I was hunting a 100-acre plot
Yeah, that's kind of the way you have to do it.
You don't have
in a
any
lot of
choice.
places,
It's
yeah.
just the way life is. So, but we're Marcus and I are doing this series called E-Scouting, and the reason we're doing it is second weekend in April. What is it? 7th, 8th, and 9th, or 6th, 7th, and 8th, something like that. I'll be over in Missoula. You'll be there too, won't you?
Yep.
And
Got
we'll
my
be
ticket.
Yeah, we'll be at the Backcountry Hunter and Anglers annual rendezvous in Missoula, Montana. And they've asked me to do an hour-long seminar on, they called it Scouting from the Couch.
From the couch, yeah.
Yeah, I call it e-scouting, or desk scouting is what I call it. So in preparation for that, Marcus and I have been doing this YouTube series, and I don't know how long that series is going to be.
That's a good question. I mean, we recorded well over an hour of footage for it.
So by the time
So,
we break that up,
break it
we'll
down.
probably edit out half of it as junk, then we'll have to fill some more in.
Yeah.
But we did the one just the other day about hunting boundaries, and so many people commented, "Why are you telling people all this?"
It's a big secret or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, why is this a secret to go and hunt boundary areas? And if you haven't seen it, folks, go out to our YouTube channel, Randy Newberg Hunter, and that episode is there. I guess I just assumed everybody knew that boundaries were low pressure areas.
Yeah. I mean,
I guess I shouldn't assume that, because when I go to an area, I notice most of the hunting pressure is right in the core where all the public land is.
yeah.
But I thought, well, anyone would figure out if that's where all the pressure is, go hunt on the boundary areas, whether it's a state boundary, a boundary where two units come together and you're hunting right next to the other unit.
Yep.
In the example, we showed some tribal boundaries. I've hunted those. A lot of times I've hunted the tribal boundaries. Everyone always likes to think of boundaries as a public-private boundary. And yeah, that's
a big one too.
a big one, and it's a very common one in the West. And I do that a lot also. But so many people emailed me or sent me messages or commented on the video of, why are you telling people all this? Well, our goal is to lower the hurdles to make it easier for people to come out west and do this stuff.
And that's just one example of something that, to find a place that has lower pressure. There's all sorts of little tricks and things, and maybe we can make some more videos explaining some of those. But
yeah, and I hope that people, when they go and watch those videos, will leave us comments on the videos, or send us emails, whatever, contact@randynewberg.com, of other stuff they'd want us to do. But the other video we did is how we use these units with difficult access to draw more tags.
Which kind of goes hand in hand with the boundary thing to some extent, yeah.
And we're sorry if you hunt antelope in Unit 25 in Wyoming. We use that as our example. And that video is out there. And the reason we picked that one is it's in a county that scores as far as record book entries, it's the number 5 county in all of North America, Natrona County, which anyone who's driven any direction from Casper, Wyoming, knows that Natrona County has a lot of antelope. I don't know if they're like weed species or something there. That drive any place from Casper is always fun for me because I love pronghorn. So we picked that unit, and the reason we picked that one is the one unit in Natrona County that has, in Wyoming Game and Fish's application booklet, they put the little asterisk there that says, caution, access is difficult in this unit, or something like that. They call it something. And so I want to show people that just about every time you see us hunting pronghorn in Wyoming, we are hunting a unit with an asterisk by it. And so now everyone's going to go and watch that video. Everyone's going to apply for Unit 25. And in the past, the draw odds in Unit 25 have been 100% because of that asterisk. Now it's probably going to screw people up, and I feel bad. But we had to pick a unit.
That's the thing. I mean, you could have used the same example for pretty much any of the surrounding any of the Wyoming units,
Right.
really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not.
There's always enough public land. Not always, just
A lot,
about always enough public land to make a hunt of it.
Yeah.
And I would rather go and have to deal with the challenge of the public-private interface than to sit at home.
Yeah.
I like this couch, but this couch should get zero use from August through December. That's the goal anyhow. So this whole e-scouting series, I don't know how many episodes it's going to end up being.
That's a good question. Yeah. I mean, I started at least 3, I think. So
Okay.
is what I've kind of broke it down into here. So
And
far.
I think the more we get into it, the more we're probably going to add. We might do a whole series on fire. We might do a whole series on hunting pressure. We might do a whole series on... And because I've been doing it for, well, let's see. I started applying for non-resident tags in 1993 across the West. So what's that, 24 years ago. And yeah, it took me a few years to build enough points before I actually started drawing anything. I guess I've taken for granted a lot of the things I do. It's, oh, well, everyone does that. And you do a good job of kind of pulling me back, saying, hey, wait a second, Randy. Not everyone's been doing it the way you have for as long as you have. And I don't mean that in any way that I'm a smart guy, because I am not. Whatever I've figured out is a function of making so many mistakes, screwing up so many tags and so many hunts and so many opportunities, that by the time you get done crossing certain ideas off your list, all the really dumb ones you don't want to do again. So you look at your list of what's left, and you say, well, I'll use this tactic or this strategy or this location. And through the process of elimination of 20-some years, you
figure it out eventually, right?
Yeah, you've either figured it out or you just took good enough notes, and even though you're below average intelligence like I am, even at below average intelligence, you don't try to repeat things that you know are bad ideas. So even a dumb person doesn't grab a hot pan with a bare hand more than once.
Yeah.
So, oh gosh, where else are we going to go with all this e-scouting stuff? It leads into so many other things of what we do. The idea of why we're doing e-scouting is last year we spent a lot of time, our YouTube channel has a lot of videos about drawing tags.
Mm-hmm.
So once you draw the tag, then the question becomes, what do I do?
Yeah.
How do I live in Illinois. How do I know what the unit looks like? How do I hit the ground running? How do I not waste a bunch of time? So this is kind of the next phase of, all right, you got the tag, or you're going to get an over-the-counter general tag somewhere.
Yeah.
Here's how you can figure it out at home without having been there before. So I don't know how people did it before Al Gore invented the internet. I don't care what anyone says. Al Gore must have been a hunter if he invented the internet. I get so many comments with people, Newberg, why do you always pick on Al Gore? I'm not picking on him. The guy took credit for inventing the internet. How the hell would I be a hunter without the internet in today's world? I mean, we used to do it. That's why I have a whole room over here behind us full of paper maps.
Yeah.
And I must be like one of those hoarding people, because I have files of old articles and research papers of all these units and places I was applying back before Al Gore invented the internet.
Yeah.
And it has really changed, I think, the sharing of information. I think that's part of what screwed up draw odds.
Oh, I'm sure.
Across all the states is...
It's so readily available. Everything is.
Yeah.
You just Google it or whatever.
Yeah.
You pull up the map system and you can see
Yeah.
right where all the boundaries are, right where the public land is. Like that, you never used to know.
No.
You didn't even, how would people even know, how to acquire a map if it did exist? I guess
Yeah.
a lot of there was BLM maps, and some forests had some maps. And
Right. You'd pick up the phone and you'd rotary dial the Forest Service office, and you'd hear me, you'd get a busy signal. and you'd call back a little later, and you'd then when they say, well, you send us a check and we'll mail you the map when we get your check. That's how it used to work. It was none of this, oh, put in my credit card information and 3 days later a map shows up in the mail.
Yeah.
Or I put in my credit card information and now I get an unlock key, a key code to get into my Onyx map.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
When I didn't have to, I didn't have to deal with that a whole lot, because right when I was really starting to hunt a lot harder is when a lot of this technology, well, the internet was around,
Right,
but obviously, but as far as like the mapping systems and a lot of the information on all the units, like that stuff started to come out pretty much right when I was getting into it. So
yeah. And then you get all these cottage industries built just around the tag application game.
yeah,
You get consulting services, application services, research services. It's like, whoa, no wonder drawing odds have gotten way, way more difficult.
yeah, and that's what I wonder, if there's just more people participating in the special draw aspect. Maybe not the hunter number hasn't changed as much, but as far as entering those special drawings, it'd be interesting to see statistics on that. I don't know if that would be available anywhere, but you have to do it state by state.
I bet it would. Arizona called me, and because we'd been doing all this promotion of Arizona, and I'd like to take credit for it, but I know it's not just because of us. But they said that for the 2017 big game drawing for elk and antelope, non-resident applications were up 12%.
Okay.
So there you go, folks. Your odds of drawing in Arizona this year probably went down 12%.
Yeah.
And they're going to blame it on us. Just like they blame the hard winter on us because we said, oh, yeah, this could be the best deer hunting in a decade out west. Da, da, da. And then we get a terrible winter.
Yeah, I saw Go Hunt just sent out an email this morning about
did they?
What the winter kill is how it's gonna affect different hunting districts.
Oh, really? I haven't read that.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. They put out a map. They had maps of each state and showed the snowpack. What percent snowpack each hunting district was, and kind of laid out state by state what it meant.
Really? I need to read that email and cross those units off my list for a year or two.
I don't know about that. Our Wyoming elk unit didn't look too good.
Was that on the list?
Yeah, or what was on had the percent snowpack. So.
We'll be down there. All we'll find is a bunch of deadheads or something.
Hope not.
but
There's some hardy elk there.
The good news is on that tag, can't we shoot a cow in November and December?
I can't remember actually.
Maybe
so. Is it only in the later period you can shoot? Okay.
I'd gladly go down there and shoot a cow in November and December.
Fill the freezer.
Yeah. People think that I have an aversion to shooting cow elk. I have no aversion to shooting cow elk.
Yeah, especially if if it's the biologists are picking the numbers and it makes sense for the area. Sure, why not?
Why? And that Wyoming just last week put up their 2016 elk success harvest results, and it's amazing the quality of a hunt you get in Wyoming. And I say that based on my anecdotal personal experience. But you go to any of those hunting units of all the type 1 tags and look at total tags, type 1 and bull harvest. It's in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70%.
Dang.
That's just like off the charts.
Yeah.
Success rates. And for Wyoming to be able to issue as many tags as they do and still have the bull harvest success that they do is incredible. But they really work at it too. Every species in Wyoming, deer, elk, and antelope, are managed on a unit basis, not a region-wide, not a statewide basis. And they monitor those. They adjust them accordingly. The way Wyoming does it is impressive. I don't mind paying the extra money Wyoming charges for the quality that you get there.
It's interesting. I was just at that Wildlife Society conference listening to a talk where Region 7 in Montana was making the argument in the opposite direction, kind of managing the whole region wide for mule deer. They're using mule deer as the example.
Really?
So it's kind of interesting. I kind of want to look into it more because I had I think some people were skeptical, but then, I mean, they were backing it up with their data and
Yeah.
kind of how they adjusted management over the years. So it is interesting. And I think in every area is different too.
Yeah. Yeah, because that would be a little bit different area. That's, let's see, Wyoming is the southern border, South Dakota is the eastern border, and then the Yellowstone River is the northern border, and I-90 is the western border.
And there's a lot of private land over there, which plays into that. And
Exactly.
there's limited, permits for the elk side of it, but I guess not so much the mule deer. But
yeah. But in a place like that with that much private land, that private land almost serves as a sanctuary / buffer / whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That protects some of the age class and protects some of the breeding stock of.
Yeah, and that was interesting too, because I think that does play a role. But because one of their complaints from hunters was that all the big bucks are coming off private land, and so they started measuring the racks of deer coming through their check stations, and
really?
they asked private or public land.
Uh-huh.
And they said, yes, it's true that the bucks were bigger on private land, and they said on average it was 0.7 inches bigger on private land is all the only.
0.7.
Yeah, they said there was pretty much no difference between private and public land deer killed in eastern Montana.
Less than an inch.
Yeah.
And they were measuring like
I think that was like they had, I want to say it was like main beam width, and I don't know if they were doing like the Boone and Crockett score or not.
Yeah,
I can't
probably
remember
not,
exactly. But no, yeah, this kind of basic measurements, and there was pretty much no difference.
Wow.
Which was very intriguing. So
That is intriguing. So I wonder if that means that the public land hunters are selecting differently than the private land hunters. So
that could be. And then also, I mean, we hunt them in the rut, and so maybe some deer,
that come off.
that it maybe previously were living on private land are coming
Cruise
off.
across.
Cruise across in public section, just like your whitetail.
Yeah, that's what
and
happened
then they get whacked. Yeah.
I wish people, when people see that episode, and unfortunately it's hard to tell the whole story of how it happens, and actually in this e-scouting series we showed an example of a piece of land identical to where I shot that whitetail.
Mm-hmm.
And what it is there's a piece of BLM land that was Forest Service land actually, where this whitetail was. But the same principle. It extends out into this piece of public.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mile long, and I think that in some places it was a 1/4 mile wide, some places it was a 1/2 mile wide. And we're sitting on the bluff on the forest looking down into these fields, and there's whitetails all over out there.
Yeah.
And it's November, and as quick as the sun gets pretty high, where do they go in bed? Up in this burn on the forest.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, that's a pretty nice buck. I think that buck needs to be shot. And you don't have to be Einstein to know that in the afternoon, the does are going to start feeding back down off the public onto the private where all the feed was. And if you're there, guess who's going to be coming along behind the does? The bucks.
Yep.
And the buck I shot was a really nice one, but he was probably, as far as quality, I think of the whitetails I saw, he would have been my number 3 buck.
Wow.
Yeah. And so these private land places that serve as, I don't know what you want to call them, buffers or sanctuaries, or some people say it's harboring. I don't buy into that. I know very few private landowners who say, I want to harbor a bunch of elk or a bunch of deer from the hunters.
Yeah.
It's just that the animals select.
Yeah. Well, and that's what does the private landowner do who has that 1,000 head of elk on his land? He pushes them off, and then they just get slaughtered, and they're going to end up right back on there the next day.
Right. And when he pushes them off or they get pushed back on, they're not real easy on fences.
No, exactly.
They don't say, let's slow down here. We don't want to ruin Bud's fence.
Mm-hmm.
So, and some landowners just have a high tolerance for wildlife.
Yeah.
And it's private land, so they can do what they damn well please with it. And to me, some of those sanctuary harbored places, I'll hunt them. I'll hunt around them.
Yeah.
And I might it might be day 4 before one of them strays across and I get my opportunity. And it just takes that mindset that, you know what, I'm going to be frustrated a good share of the time.
Yeah.
I don't know. But to your point of Region 7 in Montana, maybe that's how you have to manage mule deer. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, every area is different, I think. So
Yeah.
it was interesting to hear that argument.
Yeah, and by species it's different. And the reference I was making was to elk in Wyoming, and most of their type 1 stuff is in the western part of the state, which is heavily public land. Very few of their elk units have a lot of private land. Some do, but they just do a remarkable job down there. I would say Wyoming does the best job of any state in where the intersection of lots of opportunity and high quality and success all intersect.
Yeah.
Wyoming gets my vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, states like Nevada and Arizona and Utah, they do a great job also, but they've got such limited habitat. I mean, and you just couldn't issue as many tags in those states as Wyoming does.
So. Well, Wyoming's got the interesting issue, or whatever you want to call it, of the feed grounds too, playing into it. But maybe save that for another podcast.
Heck with it. We'll bring it up. Wyoming has feed grounds, and a lot of the neighboring states are worried about Wyoming's feed grounds because Wyoming has CWD, chronic wasting disease. And it's not a matter of if, but when.
Yep.
CWD is going to make it to Idaho and Montana via the vector is Wyoming feed grounds. Those elk winter on the feed grounds south of Yellowstone. They summer in the park. And there's going to be transmission in the park.
Probably.
Yellowstone Park is going to, because it's a mingling of elk in the summertime.
Well, and they go out really wide.
Right.
I mean, they're all over, but then they're just congregated in these small areas during the winter.
And a lot of people think that Wyoming does their feed ground stuff just to to sustain elk populations at numbers higher than the habitat should normally sustain. Part of it is there is a lot of political pressure in Wyoming to do feed grounds on public land to keep them off the private grounds.
Yeah, and that was one of the big things that led to the creation of them too.
Right. And so the private landowners and the cattle producers in Wyoming see that in Montana we have this huge problem with brucellosis. So brucellosis is managed via separation, keeping the elk away from the cattle.
Yeah. And
unfortunately in Montana, the bison get the brunt of the brucellosis.
They really do.
It's not fair to bison. And brucellosis is a disease that can be contracted back and forth between each other. And the politics of brucellosis is that if you are a cattle rancher and your herd gets a brucellosis positive, you get put under quarantine. I think if you get a second positive, I could have this wrong, then you get depopulated or your herd gets liquidated.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly. I don't think you're allowed to sell into the normal.
Right, you
market.
can't. One of my CPA clients got quarantined.
Okay.
So you think about this: you're running 300-400 cow-calf pairs, and you have to go a year without selling anything. You get zero revenue for a year.
Yeah.
But it's taken you lifetimes, you and your parents and your grandparents, to build up this herd and build this line and this genetics and everything else.
Yeah.
And now because of a disease issue, you got to go a year without any revenue, but all your operating costs stay the same.
Yeah.
It's
always really interesting punishment, if you want to call it that, to me, because
right.
I mean, brucellosis, it's not a good disease, but
no, it's
once I figured out actually what it is, I mean, it just pretty much causes abortions in the females of the species, whatever it might be. And I mean, yeah, sure, that's going to lower the productivity of your herd, but it's kind of interesting how strict it is. I mean, it's not a good thing to have.
Right. and it's governed by APHIS, Animal Plant and Health Inspection Service, a federal agency, and they have these rules. And the rule is so punitive if you are a landowner or a cattle producer like my client that also winters a lot of elk.
Yeah.
The penalty they got for allowing all these elk to winter on their place was, oh, we're going to quarantine you and you don't get to sell anything for a year until your cattle herd gets tested again and you have no positives. Their operating costs each year are $300,000 to $400,000. Feed, vet, vaccine, all the things that come.
Yeah.
With payroll, labor, the equipment, and so they had to front that cost for a year without.
Not a lot of people can do that.
No. And this is a family. This is what they live on.
Yeah.
So then, all of a sudden, people yell at them for, why do you not want elk on your place anymore? Well, when I had to fund this big loss for a year, I didn't see anyone coming to help me.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, you guys were still yelling at me.
Yeah.
So it creates these inflexible rules of brucellosis. Create this weird financial burden on producers that creates a perverse incentive. If we like wildlife, we should find ways to help those who are accommodating wildlife like they are and say, hey, let's change these rules. If you are quarantined, let's figure out a way to not almost run you out of business. If this family wasn't so financially conservative,
Yeah.
Or if they were heavy in debt, which they're not, I don't know how they could make it.
Yeah. And then just that whole setup, I mean, yeah, it creates that storm for the landowners to not want anything to do with wildlife, whether it's elk or bison or
Right. And so then you get the
whatever.
Wyoming guys looking at the Montana producers,
Mm-hmm.
anywhere from almost Billings over here to Bozeman and south down to Dillon. It's brucellosis is endemic in our elk herds at pretty high rates. Do you think those landowners want elk on their property when you have that kind of punitive financial assessment against them if their herd ends up contracting brucellosis from an elk? And we've never had a known transmission from bison that I'm aware of.
No, unless it's been recent, but I haven't heard of anything.
And what do? We shoot the piss out of bison coming out of the park, all under the fear of brucellosis.
Yeah.
Yet all of our transmissions, to my knowledge, to our cattle herds have been from elk, and there's some way they can trace that. I don't know how is it?
Yeah, I'm not the person to ask, unfortunately. But
Well, you said that Google's your friend.
Google's my friend. I can pull up my
Marcus
phone.
has an undergrad degree in wildlife management, so I always ask him the questions, and he doesn't ever want to answer anything wrong or make anything up. So he always defers and punts and says, I don't know. When really, I think he knows, but he just doesn't want to.
I would butcher it for sure.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah.
So the reason I wanted to talk about that is there are some amazing private land stewards around here.
Yeah.
That have very high tolerance for elk. And I know a lot of hunters get pissed at them. Oh, well, they won't let me go hunt. Well, guess what? It's their property. They can do what they want.
Yeah.
That is just a fact of America. The Fifth Amendment says your property rights allow you to say how your property is going to be used or not used. Mm-hmm. So anyone who has a problem with that needs to just get over it, in my mind. That's the Randy Newberg comment of the day. If you don't like the fact that elk can accumulate on private land, then move somewhere else where we don't have private property rights. And now my email is going to light up after I say
Showing
that.
all the exceptions to where.
Yeah.
Yeah, but.
So that is what it is. And if we want to have a higher tolerance for that wildlife, we better start looking at some of these screwed up rules that are out there.
Yeah.
that create disincentive to tolerate wildlife. And there's no rule I know of that is more of a disincentive than the rules regarding brucellosis.
Mm-hmm.
And we manage it now to try keep them separated. Well, when you try to separate the elk from the cattle,
Yeah.
you're pushing elk further onto the marginal winter habitat, which means the cows are going to come out of winter in worse shape.
Yep.
Probably not. Yeah, I'm sure that when that happens in severe winters like we've had this winter, it creates some higher level of abortion or lost calves.
Yeah.
It just
I mean, yeah, it'd be hard to know the true effect in every situation, but yeah, it's definitely having
some effect.
Impact of some kind. Yeah.
Right, and then they come off. Even if they do go through the birth, they're coming off in such bad shape that they're lactating and everything else is behind, and so there's been a lot of studies about how so much of this is not just one piece, it's a multitude of things, that the transition range from the winter range to the summer range is not the quality it used to be, that with the changing climate, that the green up happens so fast that elk used to kind of slowly follow this green line up from the summer winter range up to the summer range, and that's happening so fast that they can't stay in this big pulse of green anymore because it comes and goes so quickly.
Yeah.
That they're not recovering, so they're coming into cycle later in the rut, and therefore they're having later calves, and it just becomes a snowball, and everyone wants to blame these problems on simple things like grizzly bears or wolves or whatever. It's a whole multitude of things.
Oh yeah, it's rarely like, cause and effect, one thing.
Wouldn't it be nice
causing,
if it was?
Yeah, no, there's too many moving parts, and especially with anything wildlife and landscape related, it's just like there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of changing factors that play into everything. Like, it's not the wolves killed everything.
Yeah.
It's not climate change is causing everything to change. It's like this multitude of factors for sure.
Yeah. How did we get on that? Oh, we were talking about winter range in Wyoming.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how the neighboring states want to blame Wyoming for everything. And I get why neighboring states are concerned about CWD getting to their states. I'm concerned about CWD getting to Montana, getting to Idaho.
For sure.
And it's going to happen. These elk in Wyoming with CWD on their feed grounds, that CWD, when those elk come back to summer ranges and mingle with elk that then head west into Idaho or north into Montana, some of them are going to have CWD. It's not a matter of if, but when.
Yeah.
But it's such a complicated problem.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden you say, all right, we're going to get rid of the feed grounds in Wyoming, and these elk disperse. They're no longer in the feed ground areas. Where are they going to go? They're going to go to private lands.
Marginal habitat. There's just going to be too many for the for the available winter range.
Right.
That's out there.
Right. So they go to Wyoming private lands and mingle with cattle.
Yeah.
And now Wyoming has the same brucellosis problem we have in Montana. How much tolerance are Wyoming producers going to have and Wyoming politicians going to have for elk if they end up with the brucellosis problem we have here in Montana?
Yeah.
It's
hard. There's no like perfect solution. It's not like we know exactly what to do, or anybody does. But
so I wish there was an easy answer. And I know groups that have been working on this problem for 20 years. And you get Wyoming folks who want to do the right thing, and then it's like, okay, what is the right thing?
Yeah.
And any policy change goes through politicians.
Yeah.
And as quick as it goes through politicians, you're screwed.
Mm-hmm.
They got their own agendas.
Yeah.
Regardless of how hard people want to collaborate on the landscape. hunters and landowners and elk advocates and wildlife advocates and disease, specialists. They could all get together and come up with a long-term strategy that might help.
Yeah.
The politicians only look, a month down the road, a week down the road.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The solution isn't to like cut the feed grounds off cold turkey. I mean, you'd have to start a weaning process. Essentially just like limiting what you're putting out there,
and so
anything quick is just gonna have a. I mean, I don't know about negative, but it's gonna have a big impact if you do something quick and substantial like that.
And it's just gonna push the disease issue, whether it's probably both CWD and Brucellosis. It's just going to push that disease issue to some other location.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've had people say, well, why aren't you guys at the Elk Foundation doing something about it? Trust me, the Elk Foundation has been engaged in this discussion since the day the Elk Foundation was probably formed. But the Elk Foundation isn't going to go tell Wyoming, you got to do this, you got to do that.
Mm-hmm.
The Elk Foundation lets each state handle their issues themselves. And so people will hound me because they know I sit on the board of the Elk Foundation, and it's not the Randy Newberg Elk Foundation, it's the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. And 225,000 members scattered across the country. You're accountable to a lot of different interests and concerns.
Yeah.
I often push back and say, okay, are you willing to go out and buy more habitat for elk then? That's the real solution.
Yeah.
Are you going to pony up? You want to pay more in taxes, more in whatever, to go and buy critical, not just winter ground, but transition ground, summer ground. And now Arthur Middleton, the Elk Foundation, and others have been funding his migration studies. Did you see the video that came out, Elk River?
I haven't, no.
Oh. So Arthur Middleton he was in Nashville. He gave 2 presentations that were just off the charts cool if you're into this stuff. And Wyoming started doing these migration studies on mule deer quite a while ago, and pronghorn. Mm-hmm. And they found how long these migration corridors are for elk, or for mule deer and antelope. And it was really cool. So Arthur Middleton, he got his, University of Wyoming. He was a graduate student. Then he went to the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Science. And now he's a full-blown professor at Cal Berkeley, I think.
Okay.
Cal Berkeley and a well-known wildlife professor. That doesn't equate in my mind. When I think Cal Berkeley, I think of like protests and other stuff. But so he did he'd been doing this research now for quite a few years, and the Elk Foundation is one of his funders, and as are others. And he's identified these critical migration corridors, and how it's just this area of Yellowstone is kind of this gathering pot in the summer, but where these elk disperse to is crazy, where they go in the winter. But the paths they take, because now with GPS technology and radio collars, it's not like you get a blip every month or something.
No.
You're getting it real-time data, and you can follow where they go. There are some spots that are such narrow little corridors that if we lose those, we would be screwed for that elk, that group of elk. Yeah, and we're talking big herds of, many hundred or over 1,000 or whatever. So what it pointed out to me is how critical large landscape conservation is.
Yeah.
In elk country, and not just for elk, but all the species. And it gets back to when I push back on these people and say, well, okay, you want to complain about the current status. Are you willing to pony up the money for longer term solution? Well, it's not my problem. Yeah, it is your problem. It's all our problem. So, yeah, we jumped into that. We could do
quite the tangent, but
yeah, we could do a whole podcast
good.
on it. But if we did, we need to bring in some Wyoming people.
Yeah.
To get
some people actually know what they're talking about.
Give their perspective, because I'm always hesitant. Like Montana, our legislature passed a resolution. I don't know what good it did to say we want Wyoming to close their feed grounds. Well, easy for us to say in Montana.
Yeah.
And I get it. We're worried about CWD. But that resolution to me did nothing other than force Wyoming. If I was living in Wyoming, I'd almost give Montana the finger to say, you guys have no idea how complicated this problem is. It's not like we asked CWD to end up on our landscape. We did nothing to get CWD in Wyoming. All reports are it came here from some research facility in Colorado. It's not like we wanted it.
Yeah.
And we're trying to manage brucellosis. We're trying to manage for landowner tolerance of elk. So that's why we have these feed grounds. Everyone wants to say we have them just so we can have more elk for hunters to kill. No, there's a whole nother perspective of why there are feed grounds in Wyoming. A whole nother history to it that the Montana legislature a couple weeks ago, I don't know. I don't think that resolution did anything beneficial to the bigger picture. Other than, you could just say, hey, we're concerned about it in Montana. You don't need to tell Wyoming what to do. No. Oh, well.
Yeah.
Holy crap. You're right. That was quite a tangent. All right. On my notes, my script here. We got some YouTube episodes that are coming up. This morning, I just released that one that was the elk hunt.
From a while back? Or
a while back.
Oh, okay.
And this is the weird part about YouTube. You get copyright claims filed against your content. So when we produce for TV, we go out and we have to license music from all of these places.
Yeah.
A lot of people use free music.
Yeah.
And I get that, but how many complaints do you read about them? Man, I hate the music they play in those videos. It's all nothing but head banging, rocking, kind of music. Well, the reason that it is because they don't have to pay for that. It's free.
Mm-hmm.
And you won't have any copyright claims against it. I don't like that kind of music. So I tell my editing group, we're going to pay for music. And when we do that, we have to license it from 5 Alarm and George Michael and a whole bunch of these national or worldwide clearinghouses that license music. Well, then when you load it up on YouTube, YouTube has a partnership with all these groups. It says any video, we'll scan it for your music. And if so, we'll file a copyright claim on your behalf and we'll share the revenue if we get anything out of it. So every time I load up one of our episodes, I get copyright claim. And then they have 30 days to clear it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get another claim from a different group. And they have 30 days to clear it. And usually they get cleared. There's a group out of Russia that files copyright claims against most of our stuff.
Really?
And they refuse to clear them.
Huh.
So if you're listening to one of our YouTube episodes and all of a sudden the music disappears, it's because the Russian mafia or whoever the hell it is won't clear the copyright claim. And I just have to say, then delete that music from the YouTube file. So all of a sudden the music's going along, you see a piece and then there's no music. The reason being is this Russian mob group wouldn't drop the claim, so I have to choose the option of remove the music during that 30-second piece of the episode. Long story or long way to say that sometimes our content is delayed in getting to you on YouTube because of these shysters who file copyright claims against our content. Even though I've paid ridiculous sums of money to all these licensing groups. I paid it, and when you do it, you say, okay, I just want it for TV, or I want it for this, or I want it for that, and it can be just for a term. I pay for the highest level. Every media out there, whether it's TV, streaming, live, blah, blah, blah. So I get it for all those purposes, and I get it in perpetuity worldwide. That's the most expensive license you can pay for. And so I pay all that money for music, and then I still got to screw with all these copyright claims. It's so frustrating. Anyhow, that's why this episode was loaded up last summer. Well, we loaded all of our episodes last summer.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been releasing them we pretty much had them all released in the first 3 or 4 months. This one is from season 3 of On Your Own Adventures. It's the first time we flew in and did a helicopter hunt in central Montana.
Mm-hmm.
And that one, all of the copyright claims finally got released this morning. So if some of you are wondering, why is this one just popping up on the YouTube channel? That's why. And that gets me into what my next point was. We have a Utah deer hunt from last year. I think it's going to get put up just on YouTube, but it's not going to TV.
Okay.
The Wyoming bison hunt,
Yeah.
that's going to YouTube. It's not going to TV.
Okay.
Alaska bear from last year, I don't even want it to go to YouTube.
Yeah.
And they've heard me complain about this on prior podcast episodes, but I missed the biggest deer in the world, or biggest bear in the world. I don't know. But sometimes when we film, we end up with more episodes than we need for TV. So that's what these ones are. And even if they went to TV, they still would have ended up on YouTube sooner or later anyhow.
Yeah.
So we got that. And then we're going to try, I don't know how this is going to work, Marcus, but we're going to try to do a bear hunt here in Montana as a semi-live or live hunt.
Cool. Yeah.
In May. We're going to go out, hunt every evening, edit it out the next morning, and throw it up on YouTube and see if we have the technology to do that.
Yeah.
So there's going to be some stuff coming to our YouTube channel that is never going to be on TV. We're working on Amazon right now. I think by May 1st, all of our episodes are going to be available on Amazon Prime.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Matthew's in charge of that.
Yeah.
So if that doesn't get done, we'll blame that on Matthew. Gets us to the wilderness production assistant stuff.
Yeah.
We put out, I think it was in November, we made a call for, kind of announced on the podcast that we were in search of a wilderness production assistant, a WPA. And we received hundreds and hundreds of applications. And for all of you who sent them in, I can't thank you enough. But when you receive that many applications, you get some that are ridiculously qualified.
Yeah. Sure.
There were probably a dozen that they weren't wilderness production assistants. They were TV producer types. Yeah. And so many of you sent in and said, hey, I get a week each year. I'd love to come with. I'm good at this. I'll pack, whatever. And I just appreciate all the people who had an interest. And I'm trying to get back to them by email. Now that we filled, we filled the position. We offered Michael the position. And he'll start with us May 1st. And he's got a year and a half of experience producing TV, a lot of hunting stuff. So it just is like, how could you not?
Yeah.
And it's not that we don't appreciate all the other people who showed interest. It's just, when you have that many candidates, man, we had some good people to choose from. I couldn't believe it. So if you applied, thanks for applying. And if we haven't got back to you yet, it's not that we don't want to get back to you. It's just a function of time. I've been on the road the last 2 weeks. Before that, I was on the road pretty much all of January, most of December, and I'm trying my damnedest to say thanks for your time, thanks for your interest. And we're still getting people who are downloading the older episodes who are sending us in their resumes and their interest in being a WPA. So I thought we better get that out there, that we filled that position. Yeah. And no more requirements to have people chime in and offer their strong back and their vacation time for our cause. I could not believe how many people are like, well, I get 2 weeks paid vacation. I'd come for free. You just pay my way to get there.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, if you only get 2 weeks paid vacation, don't spend any of it with us. Jeez. It's nice that they would, but certainly wouldn't want them to feel like they have to do that. So, oh gosh, let's see. Do we want to get into politics?
That's up to you.
Do we have any choice? We've been staying away from politics because I don't want this podcast to just be nothing but Debbie Downer, kind of the world's coming to an end and we're always under attack, even though we always are under attack. I think you can wear people out that way. And so that's why I've stayed away from it for a while. And we're going to have to fire up the YouTube channel and go out and threaten to knock the political teeth out of a few people because Congress doesn't get it. They just don't freaking get it. And now that all the state legislatures are in session, that's, at least in the West, I don't know. We in Montana, we have a 90-day session every 2 years. And we all wish we had a 2-day session every 90 years. But even here in Montana, you got the knuckleheads who, they're bought and paid for. William Clark, who was I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast before, but I use this statement that says you can't buy a politician that isn't for sale.
Okay.
And it comes from William Clark, not of Lewis and Clark, but I think it was in the early 1900s, back when, and some people may not know this, that our senators that go to Congress, it never used to be a statewide election. It used to be your House of Representatives, your state legislature voted who got to go and be your senator.
Oh, okay.
So back in the Montana Copper Baron days, Copper Kings, William Clark was one of, and it's who Clark County, Nevada is now named after.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He wanted to be a senator in the worst way. So he was offering some ridiculous amount of money to every state legislator in Montana. Cash.
Yeah.
Here's an envelope with cash. And somewhere I thought I read that a vote for him was worth $10,000, which back in that day, that's
a
like
lot of money.
Ridiculous amount of money. And so it got to the national media back in the day when it was strictly newspapers that Senator Clark from Montana had bought his way into the U.S. Senate. And he was quite open about it. He said, well, I've never bought a politician who wasn't for sale.
Yeah.
And so when you read that whole story, it's kind of an interesting story. And now I think about it, I'm like, you know what? You can't buy a politician unless he or she is for sale. And in today's world, at the state level, they're for sale. The price is cheaper.
They're a lot more secretive about it.
Yeah.
Or maybe not. I don't.
Sometimes they're quite blatant about it. Utah makes no apologies for the fact that, hey, we're for sale.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a bunch of hate mail from Utah, but I don't give a shit. But on the federal level, it costs a lot more money to buy a politician.
Okay, yeah.
You know, here in these rural states, you can buy a politician for probably the price of a couple months' mortgage payment. It's ridiculous. And so you look at how the politics gets affected by that, and it's crazy. It's, you know, Utah is like the fostering, the incubator of all bad ideas related to public land in their state legislature. And then at the national level, their congressional delegation is like the biggest group of anti-public land people ever. And they've got a few followers from Idaho and Nevada and Arizona and a few other Western folks, but pretty much the Utah delegation is leading the charge on that. And the downside is in Utah, once you get in, you never get unelected. I mean, I think Orrin Hatch is the longest serving U.S. Senator right now. He's
Really?
Yeah. I mean, once you get in, it's like, okay, this is a job forever. And so where that becomes a problem is in Congress, chairmanship of committees is based on seniority. So Rob Bishop, who is a congressman from Utah, is the chairman of the House Natural Resources Committee that handles most of the public land bills in the House. a train wreck, a stated just advocate against public lands. He hates the idea of federal public lands. So he does everything in his power to get rid of public lands. And there was a time where there was more balance and you didn't have to worry about him. You could just discount him as some, dude who's maybe off his rock when it comes to public lands, and people would kind of laugh at him. Well, now that he's chairman of that committee and he gets to pick who his committee members are, he's loaded his committee with fellow ideologues who hate public land. And I've said it many times, and I would say this to anybody, the biggest anti-hunting movement in America right now is the anti-public land movement. The sale, transfer, or impairment of our public land.
Yeah.
You and I, we hunt public lands.
No,
Most people listening to this podcast hunt public lands.
Yeah.
And that gets me, before I get into these bills, someone brought up a point when I was in Nashville. I went and did a pint night thing for BHA, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. So these are people from Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia who were there. And why you people drove that far to listen to Randy Newberg is beyond me, but thank you all for doing it. I was told to expect 10 to 15 people there.
Oh, yeah?
I showed up and the room was packed. I'm like, uh-oh, the pressure's on now. But somebody asked a question, and I think it was a question that reflected the perspective of most everyone in that room. They said, explain to me why Westerners have this problem with state land ownership. And it's not an easy answer, but I'm going to try give it here. I grew up in Minnesota. State lands are managed by the Department of Natural Resources, which is also the group that sells your hunting and fishing licenses. So it's hard to see a concern because these DNR lands are open to hunting and shooting and fishing and trapping and whatever you want to do.
Yep.
Well, you get out west, and it's not like that. Our fish and game agencies are different from our state land boards.
Yeah, very much so.
Very much so. So, and it kind of started in Nevada. When Nevada was admitted to the Union in 1864, this new Enabling Act was used. So all the Western states admitted to the Union after Nevada had a similar Enabling Act, and the group Keep It Public has put out a really good video of the history of how Western lands became Western lands. Go to Keep It Public, and they have it on Facebook.
Yeah, that's where I saw it.
It's only 4 minutes, but it's just the greatest illustration of how federal lands became federal lands through purchase, through conquest, through other things. And that history plays into why Western state lands are so different than state lands in other parts of the country. And this person from Tennessee who asked the question is like, look, we get to hunt and fish and shoot and whatever on our state lands. And I think they were maybe asking it for clarification of what's the difference.
Yeah.
Because in the East, in the Midwest, folks aren't that worked up about it. You get out West and people are like hair on fire when it comes to state land ownership. And I hope a lot of people listening, if you're only going to listen to 10 minutes of this podcast, I hope it's the next 10 minutes, because this explanation I'll try to make seems to be at the crux of some confusion about why state transfer isn't the good idea some think it is. So in the West, we have state land boards. And like I was saying, after Nevada became a state in 1864, all the Western states have very similar situations, the Western states, where we were granted every township is 6 miles by 6 miles, 36 square miles. And they break it out. If you go to a map, you just go to Google and type in township, and it'll show you it starts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then the next row, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Next row. They number every square mile to be a section. So there's 36 sections within a township. Well, when the Western states became states, they got either 2, 3, or 4 sections out of every township granted to their state land boards. Like in Montana, out of every township, we got sections 16 and 36. So 2 out of every 36 square miles was granted to the state land board, and that was to raise money for the schools.
Mm-hmm.
You were to manage, lease, otherwise, the resources, however you could use that land to get a return on investment, that's what was to help fund the school systems.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those state land boards are like a trust. In fact, most of them are set up as trusts. And they have anywhere across the West from 3 to 5 trustees that are either appointed or elected. And they manage those state trust lands for the sole benefit of the schools. They're not public lands. They are trust lands held in a trust for a specific set of beneficiaries. Completely different than our lands held by our fish and game agencies, which are held by the state for the benefit of the citizens in general. So if you go to the New Mexico State Land Board, the funny part is on the bottom, in big red letters, it says, state trust lands are not public lands. You go to Arizona State Land Board, same thing. Arizona State Trust lands are not public lands. The Utah State Land Board, they call it State Institution Trust Lands, SITLA or SILTA or something like that. Well, they have an auction twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than manage their lands for the schools, they sell them is part of their process of converting those lands into cash. And a bunch of people were railing on them. They have their own Facebook page. And if you go back to the October auction, they were selling, they advertised it as prime big game habitat, controls access to BLM land. The things that they told us, we don't sell those pieces, but that's what they put on their sales flyer. So on the Utah State Land Board Facebook page, someone said, what the hell? You guys said that you didn't sell prime wildlife ground.
Yeah.
And whoever's running that Facebook page, their default answer to every comment was, these are not public lands, you have no say in this. These are not public lands, you have no say in this.
That'll get people riled up.
Yeah, but in reality, that person is correct.
Yeah.
These are not public lands. Once you transfer them from the federal government to state land boards, they are no longer public lands.
Well, and that's a perfect example of why, of what that means. Like, you don't have a say in it anymore, or as much of a say in how these lands are going to be managed.
Right. The only say we have in Montana in how these lands are going to be managed is if you can convince the legislature to change the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Or when you get to vote, our 5 trustees in Montana are the governor, the secretary of state, the superintendent of public schools, the state auditor, and the attorney general. And all those 5 are elected positions.
Okay.
So that's really your only say in it is when you vote. And the person you vote may not win.
Yeah.
So that's why I want people to understand this idea of state transfer that these Utah dudes are just so hung up on is taking federal lands that are public lands that are accountable to all Americans, quasi-owned by all Americans, and transferring them to Western state land boards, not to Western state fish and game agencies, but to Western state land boards where if you go to, I ask everybody, go to the Arizona State Land Board and click on the trespassing link. It says, the following constitutes trespass on state trust lands. Walking your dog. That's the very first example they get. I'm like, what, you guys want to piss off everybody? I mean, that's the very first thing they talk about as trespassing on their state lands is walking your dog on state trust lands.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, 20, 30 million acres of public land in Arizona, BLM and Forest Service. You give that to the Arizona State Land Board, and now walking your dog without paying a permit fee is trespassing. And then they go on of what the other list is, shooting. And this is, I'll make that connection after I finish this point, I guess. But any of you from the Midwest, the East, the Southeast, whatever, where your state lands are open to all these things, that I completely understand why they don't have a concern then about state land management.
Yeah.
Those of us in the West who don't have that kind of combined thing where our state lands are managed by our DNR or our wildlife agencies, that's why we are concerned. Because especially, and I use the example all the time because Colorado is such an obvious example. You can't do anything on state trust lands in Colorado unless you're the guy who's leasing it.
Yeah.
Well, who's leasing it mostly? Big corporations, mining companies, oil companies, large cattle producers, outfitters. Well, they don't let you go on those lands.
No, not for free.
No, not for free. There you go. Not in a manner that we're allowed to go on the BLM and Forest Service lands. No. So think about if the 23 million acres of BLM and Forest Service in Colorado got transferred to their state land board. I'm not talking about their Department of Wildlife. I'm talking about their state land board. And that is what these Western politicians want to do. Now you've got 23 million acres where anyone listening to this podcast, there's a good chance that if they came out west and hunted, Colorado was on their list. That would effectively say there is no public land hunting left in Colorado.
Yeah.
Zero. Think about that for a second. If Congress had their way, or if these wingnuts had their way, and it's unfortunately, and this is just a statement of fact, not political positioning, the Republican National Committee put it as a platform plank that they want to transfer these federal lands to state land boards. Mm-hmm. They said it. So it's in black and white. You can go read it in their platform from 2016. So if that happened, there's 23 million acres in Colorado that you could not hunt, fish, camp, hike, mountain bike, anything.
Yeah.
Now, if that's not if you connect the dots that the number one reason people quit hunting, don't hunt as much as they used to, or came from a hunting background and didn't even get into hunting, the number one reason is lack of places to hunt. Mm-hmm. Connect that with the dot that 70% of Western hunters hunt on public lands.
Yeah.
To me, the largest anti-hunting effort in America is the effort to sell or transfer or otherwise impair our public lands in the West.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess if I can jump in on
Sure.
a question. So I think a lot of the public or the transfer advocates right now are kind of, they want to say that they're on the same page as you. They'll say, oh, well, we just want better management and we want these to stay public.
Right.
Is what they'll tell you. Mm-hmm. And so to someone who's saying that, how would you respond? Like, oh, well, we're going to make sure, we're going to put, measures in place that none of these lands will be sold. Mm-hmm. Or, we're just going to transfer them, they're going to stay public, and you can still go hunting and do all your recreational activities.
Right.
So how do you respond to that?
Right. And I've had, being in debates with all these, I've had them use that as their deflection tool many times. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, show me the details that you can do that. Yeah. And you instantly fluster them. You say, give me the facts, give me the details, show me the history. Mm-hmm. Because my history shows that these state land boards sell land like crazy. Mm-hmm. And they'll say, well, that was a thing in the past. Oh, really? I can go to any Western state right now and I can show you where they're selling lands.
Yeah.
Oregon's getting ready to sell 80 to 90,000 acres of the Elliott State Forest. Mm-hmm. And they're like, wow, and they default to some bullshit line that makes no sense. So when they start telling you this, my advice to everybody is ask them for the details and ask them for the facts. Because every piece of history and every piece of economic data says that their idea is going to result in the loss of these lands.
Yeah.
Every bit of it.
Yeah, and that's what I noticed too, is if you point that out, then they start making this big loop around the issue and start
Right.
talking about, oh, the management's
Right.
horrible, and then they're not answering the question, they're just giving their politician answer.
Yep.
And then you just have to keep poking and
Yeah.
pointing out their BS.
I've asked them, well, how are you going to manage these lands better then?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we get a better return on our investment. Okay, that's because you currently don't have millions and millions, tens of millions of acres in endangered species areas.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have groups suing you for every little management action under endangered species issues.
And so what they say to that, though, is like, oh, well, the state systems are different, and, we're not going to be subject to as much litigation, and our state courts are going to handle those differently than the federal courts. Right. So then how do you go, how do you respond to that?
And after I pick myself up off the ground from laughing in their face, I say, do you believe that the ESA does not apply to state lands? Mm-hmm. And some of them have told me, oh, that it doesn't. I'm like, really? State lands are some sovereign nation that is not subject to the federal rules. But your point is correct. If you get in a debate with these people, it's this continuous circle that never answer a question and always come up with some other line of BS that has no plan, no strategy, no fact, no anything.
Yeah.
And back to my point of it's easy to buy a politician at the state level. These people are bought and paid for.
Yeah.
By groups who they've stated for years they want to see the public lands of America divested and privatized. And they view the state land boards as the agent to help them do that. They know that a frontal assault of just saying sell the public lands, that failed miserably when they tried that in the 80s and early 90s.
Yeah.
So now it's all about how do we market it differently to accomplish the same objective? Mm-hmm. And that's really what the effort is. They are bought and paid for.
Yeah.
And even at the national level, any politician at the national level who says they are in favor of state transfer, I'll give the credit to some of them who do not understand how this works, are ignorant, so they just called the guy from Utah or Idaho and said, what's my position on this?
Yeah.
And so they took a spoon feeding from somebody who was bought and paid for. So in effect, they look like they're bought and paid for. So,
and that's the scary part about this, people who aren't politicians who might be an advocate for state transfer. And they really do think that the states will do a better job managing the land and we won't sell them. And it's like you just have to try to convince those people, like, where's the evidence that that's what's going to happen? Like, I can't tell how any way where that's going to be the outcome. Like, show me an example where that's the case.
There's no examples.
Yeah.
All the examples are against their case.
Yeah.
And they don't want to talk about those examples. Mm-hmm. And so you go into all of this with them, and it just turns into this bullshit. After a while, and I got to be careful because I've lost my tolerance for it. My formalities with politicians anymore takes about 30 seconds of, hi, how you doing?
Yeah.
And that's all the more formality I'm going to give them. And they expect they should get more formality, but they've worn it out with me. Piss on them. They are here to screw us out of our public lands. It's that simple, and I'm over it. So here's the other crazy piece that people don't realize, that none of these Western state land boards that I've been able to found allow target shooting and recreational shooting. So, and as myself being an endowment member of the NRA, I'm contacting them regularly about this. What the hell? Where are you guys?
Yeah.
We would lose shooting on hundreds of millions of acres of currently open land, and you guys aren't saying boo shit or maybe about it. Mm-hmm. And they assure me, oh, Randy, just calm down. When the time comes, we'll be there. Well, I think we're there.
Yeah.
I think we're past being there.
Yeah.
Now, I get my NRA magazine, American Hunter, and if any city, county, whatever, threatens to close 2 acres to public shooting, it makes it in my American Hunter magazine. Oh, the world's coming to an end. A bunch of jackbooted thugs are here to take your shooting away on 2 acres of county land. Mm-hmm. But yet we've got politicians who are actively working in Congress and state legislatures to screw us out of public shooting and target shooting on hundreds of millions of acres of Western land, and you can't get the NRA to even pick up the phone to write an email, to make a position statement?
Yeah.
What the... I'm at a loss.
And it's surprising too is that was one of the arguments at the Wildlife Society thing. The National Wildlife Society has no position statement on the sale or transfer of federal lands either, and that
So the Wildlife Society,
that's a whole different. That's like completely separate from the NRA. There's some big groups out there that haven't come out and
made a position.
Because
the Wildlife Society is a society of all the wildlife scientists in the country.
Yeah.
A lot of people think it's some sort of nonprofit crazy.
Oh no. This is like
group.
the state biologists
Right.
Those are a lot of. I mean, at the Montana conference, it was like Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks biologists and constituents are the ones that are. I mean, there's also people from NGOs and other organizations there, but. That's by and large.
So this national group doesn't have a position.
As far as I can tell, it's not on their website. I emailed, I haven't got a response, but the state does not. Montana state chapter for sure does not have a position.
Really? Just because they haven't got around to it?
Yeah, they haven't got around, and that was part of the agenda at the plenary this year. Was one of the speakers was making the argument we need to take a position on this.
Yeah. Well, I would think so because, wildlife management on state trust lands is so far down the list of priorities. It's all about they need to get a return on that money.
Yeah.
And back to that point, these state land boards, the trustees, have to follow the state constitution and the state statutes that say if these assets are not returning a return on the investment, they must be liquidated and converted to other assets. Yeah. Which is why Elliott State Forest in Oregon is being sold. Mm-hmm. Because since the litigation got hot and heavy in 2011 and 12, you look at the receipts, the timber receipts, the money or profit or loss that forest has realized, it's been a loss every year. So the asset is not producing revenue. It's losing money to the trust. Mm-hmm. So the trustees have no choice by law and constitution other than to sell it and convert it to other liquid assets that can be invested in the stock market or wherever, however they would get invested. Anyone who wants a crystal ball of what is going to happen if these federal lands got handed over to state land boards, Google is your friend. Yeah. Elliott State Forest, Oregon. Go and read it. That is the crystal ball of what's going to happen. The other side will not answer that question when you bring up, well, if this isn't going to happen, why is 90,000 acres in Oregon on the auction block? Yeah. Well, that's well, I thought you told me that state lands weren't subject to these federal rules. They're just completely out to lunch.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing too. I mean, I think you've been doing a pretty good job of distinguishing between state management of like wildlife versus the land, and you have to realize, and you have been saying this, but the state, in the western states, a lot of the wildlife agencies like Fish, Wildlife, and Parks in Montana, they're managing the wildlife. They're not managing the land. Right. The state land boards are managing the land. Right. And it's very, very different.
Right. And the other thing is, our state in Montana and just about all the western states, the wildlife is held in trust for all citizens of the state. The state land board, the lands are held in trust for a select group of beneficiaries, the school districts. Yeah. That's a completely different group of beneficiaries accountable to a much smaller group of people with a much smaller list of concerns than state wildlife management. The flip side of that is the U.S. Constitution and a bunch of court cases based on the Constitution have said that states hold wildlife in trust for all citizens.
Yeah. And that's what, I mean, why I brought that up again is because people will say, like, well, how come you want, grizzly bears and wolves managed under the state versus the federal government? and but then you want the lands managed by the federal government, and
Right.
it's two different agencies. It's not the same thing.
That operate under completely different rules. One has an open process, one has a closed process. One is accountable to all citizens of the state. One is accountable to a small, select group of beneficiaries who aren't even people, technically. That's the school systems. The other part of it is, wildlife by the U.S. Constitution is a state purview. So how do I say, oh, the courts are wrong? The U.S. Supreme Court, in all their cases that say this is a state, wildlife itself, not the land, but the wildlife, is a state purview. Mm-hmm. If you believe in the U.S. Constitution, you believe that the judiciary has some role under Article 3, mm-hmm. and you got to follow what they say. Now, the judiciary, as it relates to the Constitution and relates to federal lands, has said the federal government owns land and mm-hmm. can do so. You get these wingnuts out there who have their own version of the Constitution, say, oh, it's unconstitutional for the federal government to own land. Well, either you've got your head up your ass if you say that, and your reading comprehension sucks so bad that you couldn't read the court cases that say that the U.S. government can, or you're what I call a constitutional convenient. You believe the Constitution is a document of convenience. You just pick and choose which parts you want to believe.
Yeah.
And so those people don't, they ignore Article 3, that the courts have a role mm-hmm. under our Constitution. If you're a constitutionalist, you have to respect Article 3 and what the courts determine. So, but good point for bringing that up, because a lot of people do say, well, I don't get it. Why do you like state management of wildlife, but you don't like state management of lands? Because it's like apples and dog food. There are apples and cars. This isn't like apples and apples. It's not even apples and oranges. We're talking apples and locomotives or something. It's that different. But the other side has the convenient argument of kind of blending it over real easily and making it look the same.
Well, and that's the thing. I think that's what gets a lot of people on first glance. They're like, oh, FWP does a really good job. Like, well, no, it's not.
Right.
Or it's not the state wildlife agency. So,
right. Yeah, the idea is not to hand these over to state wildlife agencies. And even if they did, the state wildlife agencies couldn't afford them.
Oh, yeah.
Fires, roads, the federal government, there's two programs that is called PILT, Payment in Lieu of Taxes, and SRS, Secure Rural Schools. The BLM and Forest Service, that's how they pay their local property taxes on these lands. Mm-hmm. The states couldn't even afford to do that.
Yeah.
The state land board could not afford to pay the property taxes on the Gallatin National Forest that's right out my window here. And just, it's just the reality of it. So it's a bad idea, but when you're a politician that's bought and paid for, you're accountable not to the general public. You're accountable to the guy who signed the front of the check that bought you. Mm-hmm. That said, we've been hammering this political thing.
Hard, so. We definitely got that.
Which is good. Some of you saw on our Facebook that in January, when the House of Representatives in Congress convened, they passed what was called H.R. 5, House Res 5, and that's where they set their rules of how the House is going to operate in this Congress. And they said that when it comes to disposal of public lands, we no longer have to account for lost revenues. All previous Congresses operated under the premise that if you got rid of public lands, you'd have to offset the revenue loss. BLM gets all this royalty from oil and gas, from mining, from whatever it might be. Well, now they said we don't got to account for that. Because in the past, if they would have done that, they would have had to raise revenue somewhere else through taxes. Well, they don't want to have to do that. They want their cake and eat it too. We'll sell the lands, lose the revenue, or we'll transfer the land, not sell it. We'll transfer it to states, we'll lose the revenue, and we're just not going to raise the taxes to offset that. So it's an accounting game. And as a CPA, I'm like, this would be like, what's an example? If I was to make a financial statement, and I only had to report my revenues, not my expenses. Or I provided a balance sheet or statement of net worth that only listed my assets, not my liabilities. That's in effect what Congress is saying.
Mm-hmm.
So that was setting the table for the upcoming budget requests that have been made. Congressman Rob Bishop from Utah, who chairs the House Natural Resources Committee, made a budget request of $50 million to help facilitate the transfer of federal lands to the states. Because under the new House accounting rules, he doesn't have to account for all the revenue losses that would be there. Plus, he's asking for an additional $50 million to help facilitate this process.
Yeah.
It's like, really? If you are from Utah and you live in Rob Bishop's district, you need to be on his desk, banging away, just hammering him. But for some reason, he still gets elected. Out on our Facebook page, Randy Newberg Hunter, I posted this.
Mm-hmm.
And some guy put up a picture of Rob Bishop with his office phone number on there. So go to our Facebook page, Randy Newberg Hunter, and it was a post sometime the first week of March. And you will see where I talk about Rob Bishop wanting to do this. And his phone number's there. Even if you don't live in his district, call him and just hammer him. And then we had Jason Chaffetz from Utah. He's in the House. He submitted 2 bills.
Mm-hmm.
H.R. 621, which would have sold 3.3 million acres of BLM land, supposedly suitable for disposal.
Yeah.
These maps were put together in the 80s and 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And I went out and looked at the maps for some of the places in Idaho. I've hunted some of those places.
Jeez.
And at least here in Montana, the map I pulled up for a lot of our places, nothing over 60. The largest parcel I think any of them were was 40 acres.
So it wasn't as big of a deal,
Right.
but the other states.
The maps I pulled up in Colorado
Yeah.
and Idaho and Nevada are big blocks of BLM
Mm-hmm.
that have county roads going through them.
It's like perfect. They already have access. There's no access issues.
Right. So it's like, how are these suitable for disposal? Point being, that bill caught all kinds of fire. Travis says, I'm going to withdraw it. So he writes his Utah partner, Rob Bishop, and says, please withdraw this bill. Well, once a sponsor submits a bill to a committee, he loses control over it. The committee gets to decide what to do with it. So Bishop has not withdrawn that bill yet.
Oh, really?
No, it's still out there. It's working its way through his committee. Travis then introduces House Resolution 622, which is to defund law enforcement of the Forest Service and BLM and block grant that amount of money to the local governments, to the county sheriffs. Okay? County sheriffs currently don't have enough money to operate on because the western counties just aren't funding them.
Mm-hmm.
They're overtaxed. They're overworked. They can't hardly enforce the local ordinances and local laws. And then we're going to say, oh, here's a little bit of money. Do you think those people want to go out and then tell their deputies, oh, go take care of timber theft and all the pot being grown on the national forests across the west? I guess in the southeast and along California and Oregon, the Forest Service lands are like pot gardens in some places. The enforcement level of what these federal law enforcement people have to do, I had no idea till I started talking to a bunch of them.
Yeah.
You got enforcement of grazing laws. You got enforcement of all these other laws. You think that county sheriffs are set up for that? They're not. Chavez knows it, but he's playing on this emotion of federal overreach, and he keeps calling them desk jockeys in D.C.
Yeah.
And how few of them there are. There's not enough of them out there anyhow to enforce the law. Well, that's because Congress doesn't give them any money for enforcement. So that bill is still out there. And the whole idea behind it is let's impair the value of these lands. Let's just make it a free-for-all out there. Let's let the Bundys go and graze their cattle all over without any repercussions. Because he's a Bundy sympathizer. He just doesn't want to say that, oh, this is my friend Cliven Bundy bill.
Yeah.
He may as well. That's really what it is. And then you look at how many of these Western sheriffs belong to this group. It's called the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association.
Okay.
It's a group of people that some of them, not all of them, some of them have their own vision of the Constitution of what they're going to enforce or not going to enforce. So you want to grant a bunch of money to these fringe operators who got elected as county sheriffs who refuse to enforce certain laws. Last I checked, I didn't think county sheriffs were the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So we're going to give some of those guys, the ones who subscribe to those series, we're going to give them money. So Chavez, again, the Utah delegation is so far out in the weeds on public lands. I can't even begin to figure it out. And then we have the new one that came up. It didn't have any text. It didn't have any substance to it when it was first introduced. It's HR 1106. Okay. It's introduced by a guy from Carson City, Nevada, who's in Congress, Mark Amodei. I think that's how you pronounce it, Amodei. He claims to be a big hunter and blah, blah, blah. This is called, he now put a title to it. It's called the Small Tracts Conveyance Act.
Okay.
And he actually put the text out there now. And the text is, if you have federal lands adjacent to you, this bill would make it easy to convey parcels up to 160 acres. Well, I think of how many places 160 acres could block access to a Forest Service chunk, to a BLM chunk, to whatever. And this bill is like, let's start selling land again. But the only people who qualify are those who have federal land adjacent to them. Well, where I live right here, I don't have any federal land adjacent to me. I do a mile over there. And he's a stated transfer guy. He is pals. He's a running buddy with Bishop and Chavez and those guys. So again, it's piece by piece, bit by bit. These guys want to screw us out of our public lands through outright sale, through outright just transfer to the states, to making it impossible to enforce or manage these lands. If Chavez was really concerned about better land management, why does he want to defund law enforcement? Enforcement is one of the parts of land management.
Yeah.
So when he introduces a bill like that and then says, I'm about better management, I say bullshit. Don't piss down my neck and tell me it's raining.
Yeah.
And that's, in effect, what he's doing. So, folks, this one is about ready. The fertilizer's about to hit the ventilator on House Resolution 1106. As quick as we start blowing that up, Amodei's going to hopefully say, ooh, what the hell was I thinking? And here's the other part. In the tracking of this bill, they got rid of all the tags and everything else. So
you can't Google it.
No, you got to be a sleuth to figure out where they're putting it, what they're doing with it. He's chicken shit. He knows it's going to get a lot of heat. So there you have it, folks. HR 1106. Light him up. Call the congressional switchboard. I can't believe I don't have that number, but I'll put it in the video description. And for those of you who are listening, just go and Google congressional switchboard, and it'll give you the phone number to call. It's a 202 number. And when you call there, they'll say, where do you live? And you tell them, and they'll say, okay, here is your congressman, here are your senators. Do you want to leave a message? And leave a message for them that says, this sucks. All of these bills suck. And if you know who they are, ask for their local numbers and just hammer them. I mean, these guys are starting to take their phone off the hooks and disconnecting their answering machines or whatever. When on our Facebook page, when that guy posted Bishop's phone number.
Oh, yeah.
I then posted it out on the Hunt Talk forum. And I saw it got posted a few other places. Guys were calling saying the lady who answered was not happy. Who is doing this? Make them unhappy, make them squirm, make them as uncomfortable as possible. So,
For sure.
now it's time for a blood pressure pill. Not that I have high blood pressure, so I don't have any blood pressure pills, but what else we got to talk about, Marcus?
Any other important political issues that are coming up?
If I was to spend all the time about all the dumb things that are in state legislatures right now, we'd need 4 more hours of podcast time.
Gotcha.
It's just, I don't know where state legislators come up with some of their ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Is like, wow, really? But so I'm trying to think what we should do for our next topic. We're going beaver trapping pretty soon.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, our muskrat thing turned out pretty good.
Yeah?
A lot
sure.
of positive views on that.
Yeah.
If you go out to our YouTube channel, we did a 3 episode series of how to set muskrat traps. Then we went and checked them, caught a bunch, and then we showed people how to skin them and get them ready for market, and then we cooked them and ate them. And we're going to do the same thing with beaver. But the beaver one, I don't know if we'll catch enough beaver for us to do our own video, because the folks over at the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers,
Mm-hmm.
when they have their cook-off or whatever they call it,
Yeah.
they told me to bring a half dozen beaver tails and the hinds off 3 beaver.
All right.
I'm not sure. We're going to go do the YouTube series about how to trap beaver, though. And,
Cool.
And do that, but trying to figure out what else we got coming up here. We got some bear hunting.
It's going to come right around the corner.
I know, turkey hunting.
Yep.
I'm the world's worst turkey hunter. I am the world's worst turkey hunter, but I applied for a special
Yeah, when
permit.
do you know when they come out with those results?
I don't. It's usually pretty soon. So, man, if I could go and kill a turkey, anybody can kill a turkey. The hard part is just the whole public land thing. A lot of times, at least in the West, in the spring, the turkeys are on private land often. Not always, but a lot of times, because that's where the best food is this time of year, until the bugs and insects and everything else start coming out more on the public land. So, I guess we'll do some updates when we draw tags.
Yeah.
Also access projects. Elk Foundation just completed this really big access project. Really small access project. It's a small piece of land on the west side of the Tetons in Wyoming.
Okay.
And it gives access to all of this Forest Service acreage on the west side of the Tetons.
That's awesome.
We're right on the Idaho-Wyoming border. I'm trying to remember the name of it. But the Elk Foundation and its partners just surpassed the 1 million acre mark of open public access, where they either created or improved access to over 1 million acres of public land. I think it was the project in Wyoming that got them over the hump there.
Nice.
So if you go to rmef.org and you can Google, search their access projects, that one would pop up. And it was cool to see at Elk Camp some of the access projects the Elk Foundation has been doing. And obviously I sit on the board, so I get to see them and we approve them. But I think for our members to see a bunch of them and see the slideshows and the video presentations of what they are and where they're at, it gives them a feel of, wow, that's what my money's doing. That's what my donation of my time or my talent or my money, that's what that goes for. And
Yeah.
so Elk Foundation just surpassed the 8 million acre mark of land either habitat improved or permanently protected. So
Awesome.
that's a lot of land.
Yeah.
8 million acres, and then another million open to public access, and every year the Elk Foundation, the strategic plan, has acreage set goals of how much more public access and permanently improved and habitat protection needs to be done each year. So all of you who are donating, contributing, or otherwise a member of the Elk Foundation, thanks for all you do. It's fun to see that, kind of get behind the scenes and see how it's working.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I think one of the things we should do as a podcast next time, is you and I have been talking about this video series of the inconvenience of conservation, or the uncomfortable nature of conservation.
Yeah.
And we have all these stories that we're researching where people did amazing conservation work against daunting, terrible odds.
Mm-hmm.
And here, however many years later, we're all grateful for it. And I uncovered another one when I was down in Nashville at elk camp.
Awesome.
It's the Kentucky elk story. That story, Tom Baker, I got to tell that story. It is so cool how a guy who was a fanatic elk nut wanted to see elk in Kentucky, and what he did and how hard he worked to get elk in Kentucky is just such a cool story.
That's awesome.
We need to do a podcast and a YouTube episode on that. We need to do one on the dam that never was, that would have put a dam on the Yellowstone River and made the Paradise Valley south of Livingston a reservoir instead of a valley. We need to do the one on Cecil Garland up on the Scapegoat.
Yeah.
How that would have been ski resorts and everything else, and now it's just badass wilderness backcountry. And if any of you have just a really cool conservation story in your backyard where somebody stuck their neck out and paid a huge cost, or just stuck with it to the end to create conservation miracles in your backyard, let me know about them. We're working on this series and this topic of how even when it's uncomfortable, it's inconvenient, and it's never easy. Some of our greatest conservation, some of our greatest wildlife stories and landscape stories were done by hunters who, they didn't care how difficult it was. They didn't expect it to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't care how uncomfortable it was or how inconvenient it was. They stuck it out, and it might have taken them 2 years or 10 years, but now we're the beneficiaries of it. And I think those are stories worth telling. So,
For sure.
I think we've talked long enough, Marcus.
All right.
All of you watching on YouTube, thanks for watching. All of you listening, thanks for listening. We just had a podcast go over 100,000 downloads.
That's awesome.
One episode is over 100,000, and that was with the Hushing guys.
Yeah.
Casey and Eric and Brian. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. We're trying to figure out how we can do a hunt with them.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're trying to figure out if they can come up bear hunting, or we'll do something together, just because
Yeah.
their audience and our audience, it's kind of cool to see every time you go and collaborate with a different group, you reach a whole different audience that didn't know about you. And so we're trying to collaborate with other groups and other people to make sure that this self-guided public land story that we talk about gets out to as many people as possible. So anyhow, folks, until the next time, thanks for everything. Sure appreciate it. And take care.